Hello, welcome to Dreadlocks Q&A 20, the 20th in my series of Dreadlocks question and answer series. Is where I answer questions that have been posted by you guys. I take 4 questions that have been asked in the comment section of previous Q&A videos and 1 from the Facebook group. Since this is my 20th Q&A, I'll be answering my 100th question within this video, so there's a little bonus at the end. But that also means I have quite a lot to get through in this video, so I'm not going to read out the whole question, but it will still be posted on the video so you can read it through if you wish. First question is from Kristan Robinson, and it's regarding elastic bands. So you can check out the whole question here. I have previously mentioned elastic bands. I have a whole video on elastic bands, rubber bands, and I'll post a link to that in the description section of this video if you want to check it out. Quickly going through elastic bands. They're great for sectioning your head because you want to section the whole head off rather than just do one, and they'll hold everything in place while you do your twist and rip here or your back comb there. I personally don't recommend leaving them in the hair long term because the rubber can kind of rub against other hairs and you don't really want things of that nature rubbing against them, possibly breaking hairs. And cheaper elastic bands have been known to sort of do this weird melty thing. They turn into a goo. I don't really know why. Avoid cheap elastic bands. Also, if you have really loose dreadlocks, you can get loose hairs sort of knotting over the top, and you know, that's not good because they get stuck in there and you have to cut them out. Quick note, you mentioned the tips. I also wouldn't recommend putting rubber bands there for the same reasons as at the root, but also you're just going to be holding the hairs together. They're not going to knot, they're just going to be squeezed in, so as soon as you take the elastic band off, they're just going to be the same as when you put the elastic band on. I would really recommend just leaving the tips alone. I mean, young tips are going to be messy when the dreads are young. You just kind of have to deal with it and wait for them to shrink up and tighten. If you mess with them, you're going to kind of be messing with their flow and stuff. Next question is from GobblesPlays, and it's about, you know, living with dreadlocks and them kind of being not all that socially acceptable. I guess it depends where you live. Again, the question is posted here if you want to read it in full, if you want to press pause. I'm not going to sit here and lie and say that, you know, having dreadlocks is the same as having normal hair. People are going to often stare at you in certain situations because you are going to look a little bit out of place. There's no way around that. I mean, if you had a big mohawk and went somewhere that is maybe a little bit dress up, people are going to look at you. Dreadlocks are kind of similar in that way. With employment, I think it's sort of looked at in the same way as visible piercings and tattoos are. If you're going to go somewhere that would maybe discriminate against you for having visible tattoos and piercings, they're probably going to do the same for dreadlocks. I think they all kind of fit in the same sort of boat there. I've had them since my mid-teens, so I don't really know how life is without them, so I can't really comment on how I've lived my life because I can't say that I've been treated any differently with or without dreads because I've just always had them. Kevin Huey asks about dreadlocks separating at the root. Again, question is here. When you have young dreads, they are going to maybe start to grow out a little bit because it takes a while for the roots to lock up. So what you can find is they can unravel a bit at the root as well as continue to grow out, so you can kind of get loose space there and they can sort of split. But as long as you're not interlocking those dreads at the root, and that's, you know, passing the dread through the root, they will, you know, lock up to the root. If you're having really bad problems with it, try sticking a bead over the bit where they're splitting, or again use string. Don't use a rubber band on loose roots like that. Dalton Burrow wants to know my opinion on crochet needles. I don't use a crochet needle on my hair. I can definitely see the appeal of crochet hooks. When people ask me my opinion on crochet hooks, it's normally coming from someone who has immature dreads that are under 1 year, and I really don't recommend using the crochet hook on dreads that are that young. Over the long term, if you're going to be crocheting heavily for the entire lifetime of the dread, it can damage the dread, you know, you're stabbing through. If you're cautious and using a thin enough hook, it's not going to be such a big deal. But the main problem that often comes up is when you're crocheting the dreads, you're stuffing more and more hairs in there, and that makes them kind of stiff if you're not careful. In my experience, what has happened is I get questions from people saying, hey, my dreads are really stiff and poking out, I've had them X number of months and they still haven't laid down, or why do my dreads look like this? And then my first question is always, do you crochet the dreads? And I go, yeah. So if you're going to use a crochet hook, you know, use it in moderation. With mature dreads, I think it can be really helpful. You know, if you have a patch of loose hair that really doesn't want to knot up, then you can use a crochet hook to pull it in. But when you have really young dreads, the whole dread is going to be a loose mess. Crocheting doesn't, you know, skip the maturing process. It's just going to stuff loose hairs in, and it can slow them down if you pull it too tight around the root and stuff. So to you and anyone who asks, I would say if you're going to use a crochet hook, wait until the dreads have matured, and then they're going to have locked up all the loose hair that they're going to lock up, turned into the shape that the dreads are going to mature into, and then you can tweak them yourself a little bit with the crochet hook if you want. Okay, those are my YouTube questions for this week. Since it is my 20th Q&A video, and I do answer 5 questions at a time, it means that my next question will in fact be my 100th question. Normally this would be one from Facebook, but because it's, you know, the 100th question and it's kind of a big deal, well, it is to me, I decided to do something a little bit special, a little bonus. I'm going to answer all the questions that have been posted on Facebook this week. So if you've asked me a Facebook question, it's going to get answered right now, but you know, I'm going to have to go quite fast because this video will be really long. So Nicholas's question is about my dreads looking neater at the moment. I think you can see a really big change between my updates now and the ones in summer before I went on vacation. I think the swimming in the sea, the salt water really helped out, but I still do my same old nothing, no maintenance. Neil Dread Dr. Donovan is asking about when he started his dreads. He was a perfectionist, going super neat, you know, working on them, and now he wants to relax into just letting them grow out and, you know, lock themselves. This is perfectly fine. Depending on how you've been maintaining your dreads, you might have to wait a little bit and let them grow out a little bit. If you've been crocheting or you know, working on the roots yourself, you might have to wait for them to grow out a little bit, get a little bit of a loosey length before they're going to be able to start to lock up. The only thing you might notice is there'll possibly be a texture difference between the stuff you've crocheted or worked on and the new growth. Okay, I've got 3 questions that I think can all be answered at once. From Samantha Frock, Greg Showen, and Dewey Tyler Gordon. There are questions regarding either dreadlocks not locking up properly, falling loose, or dreadlocks that have locked bit, loose bit, loose bit, you know, not locked all the way through. Now when you've got young dreads, you know, 1 month, 2 month, 3 month, 4 month, it's easy to think that your dreadlocks are falling out, not looking good, you know, completely coming apart, but I promise you that is normal for what they look like at that stage. As long as you've got past 1 month or so and they haven't gone completely back to loose hair, it's unlikely that they're going to go back to loose hair at that point because, you know, they're knotted enough. As long as where you've made the section, as long as some of that is knotted at least into some sort of clump around that section, that's all you need. Eventually it will lock up. Often people say my dreadlocks are X months old and they look like this, and I go look at some timelines where people have got dreads that age. I guarantee you won't find any at that age that look, you know, acceptable to how you think dreadlocks should look. So as long as you have some parts locked, the rest will catch up. So whether that's like really loose bits and just a little bit holding the lumps together, or whether you've got some nicely locked bits and then a loose bit and a locked bit. There's no sort of magic way to speed them along, get them to all go nice and uniform. You just have to wait for them to sort of even out. I've been asked these questions a few times. I think at the start of my Q&As I was getting asked questions about patches of loose bit within mature dreads, and then by the time I came to actually answer the questions, because there was a queue, the people would come forward and say my dreads have sorted themselves out by now. Chelsea Deek wants to know about washing dreads for the first time, has been told that she should wait 2 months. I would not wait 2 months, that would be not fun at all. When I started my dreads they told me I need to wait like 2 weeks before the first wash. I couldn't last that long because it was just irritating, and I didn't know that I should have started with the dreadlock soap and relaxed my washing before I started into dreads. When people ask me, I tell them to wait like 5-7 days. I mean, greasy hair doesn't lock as well as clean hair, but you still want to give it those few days for those knots that you've twisted and ripped or backcombed in to settle. If you backcomb your dreads and wash them straight away the next day, then they might not hold up as well as if you wait 5 to 7 days. But if you wait a week, go ahead and give them a wash. You know, be gentle. If you see my washing and drying video, you don't want to be as rough with them as I am. Mine are like old rope. I can, you know, knock them about a bit. You should be able to feel how much they can take. Emmy Catmilk Way wants to know whether her newly dreaded bangs will be able to, you know, move out of her face. And I'll answer that question with yes. I mean, I have all my fringe hair locked up and I can move them out of her face. Obviously when they're young and you've just made them, they're going to be kind of stiff, and also they're not going to weigh a lot, so they're not really going to move around. But once they get older, a little bit longer and a little bit looser, they'll be movable. You know, these are heavy enough to kind of stay where I put them, and also they're soft enough at the root that they have no sort of stiff direction that they want to stay in. They'll go wherever I put them. So I mean, I think once you start washing them a few times and they loosen up and just become sort of floppy, you'll be able to move them without much worry. Harris Ragamuffin Ahmetovic wants to know what my roots are. Not dreadlock roots, but, you know, my family. English, English, and English, and English. Both parents English, their parents English. As far back as I can tell, we are all English. So my roots are here. Ashley Quimby wants to know about having damp dreads in a damp place. Just hairdryer. That's all I can say. I've been using a hairdryer kinda hardcore on my dreadlocks the entire time. I always have my hairdryer set as hot as it will go, as powerful as it will go. And if you've seen my drying video, I wrap them all up and kind of bake them. I've never had much trouble with it. So I've been doing that for, you know, like 6 years or so, and I'm yet to have any dread dry out and break off. And I'm washing my dreads, you know, every 2 to 3 days, so I think that it's probably okay to be hardcore with the hairdryer. You know, I've been different places with my dreads. I've been humid places, and I've been really dry, cold places. Never had any problem, just use the hairdryer. There's lots of worry about having dreadlocks damp for long periods of time, dread rot, mold, all that stuff, and you really have to neglect them in such a way for that to happen. You have to sleep on them wet multiple times. As long as you're being even just the slightest bit sensible, you'll be okay. Right, those are all my questions. Congratulations if you made it this far through the video. I realize it's going to be a long video. But you know, I wanted to celebrate in some way reaching my 100th question, and also, you know, Facebook fans for leaving questions, so I do both things at once by answering all your questions. If you have any questions that you would like me to answer in my Dreadlocks Q&A, you can either leave them in the comment section to one of my Q&A videos. Please write question at the start of your comment. Or you can join the Facebook group at facebook.com/latydreads, whereby each week I will post a status and you can post your questions on there, and I'll pick random questions off for the Q&As. Thank you for watching. Thank you for, you know, helping me get to my 100th question and all that, 20 Q&A videos. Thumbs up if you enjoyed this video. I'd give you guys a thumbs up if there was some way to do it. Subscribe to see more, because then you'll get all my new videos. Everything, as always, on latydreads.com. Thank you for watching. Farewell.